Boom shakalaka, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters around the world. It is your chocolate Nubian soul brother, Chris Shul, aka the Esoteric Noetic, and I thought I would make a response to a video by Larken Rose. I made a video probably a year back on him talking about the topic of veganism, and he's dropped another video on vegan dishonesty, and I wanted to get into this. I started watching the video, only got about 5-7 minutes in, and whereas I started off agreeing with some of the statements, I found myself disagreeing with a lot of his arguments, and rather than watching the entire video and feeling the need to make a response video, I thought I would watch this video in real time and extemporaneously address what I disagree with and what I agree with. So without further ado, let's look at this video, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see what Larken Rose has to say in regards to vegan dishonesty.
Larken Rose here. I'm going to make a prediction, which is that most of the people who complain about this video or comment below negatively are going to do one of two things. Either they're going to complain about something before watching the whole video, something I later cover in the video, or they're going to complain about something I didn't say and didn't imply and don't believe.
Well, I certainly will try not to complain or critique you on things that you have not said. I try to avoid strawmanning people's positions, but in regards to responding to this video without having watched the whole thing, I think, understandably, people don't have 30 minutes to watch an entire video, so yeah, they'll hear what you have to say, and they'll often comment on things that they don't agree with that you say. So, and I think that's perfectly rational. I mean, unless, of course, you say something and then at the end of the video you say, you know what, I was just joking, I didn't mean any of this stuff. I think it's perfectly understandable for someone to do that. So, look, in fairness, I'm going to watch your video. Granted, I have not watched the entire thing. I'm going to respond to your video in real time and tell you my thoughts in regards to your arguments. I think that's fair.
So don't do either one. Watch the whole video before you respond, and if you're going to complain about what I actually said instead of whatever you imagined I might have meant, because I say what I mean, and I'm rather clear about that.
Touché.
This video is about the fact that a lot of vegans, especially vocal militant vegans, are irrational and dishonest in their message. Now, I want to start off by saying there are a couple things about their agenda that I very much like and I very much approve of. I like it when human beings extend their compassion and their empathy even to other species. I think that's a very good sign. I think when people don't do that, it's scary. When they're completely callous and heartless to the suffering of other species, that's creepy. And when they all the way enjoy it in some sadistic way, that's beyond creepy.
Touché. I think we can all agree on that. I think most of us that have a soul abhor violence towards beings that can't defend themselves. The same way we feel when someone is being violent towards a child is the same way that many of us feel when someone is being violent towards a being that doesn't want to hurt anyone. So dogs and non-human animals. These animals that I think in a lot of situations don't have the capacity to defend themselves, don't have the same level of awareness that we have. And many of us feel as if it is grossly immoral for us to take advantage of them when they do not have the capacity to defend themselves. So that's understandable. I would say that I agree with you on that. I think a lot of vegans, vegetarians, a lot of people that are against the idea that it's okay to eat these animals, why they get so frustrated is because on one side, a lot of people maintain that they love these animals. They love them. They love them as they love their dogs. However, they're willing to support industries, or not even support industries. They advocate for their murder. They say that it is somehow necessary to kill these animals, to kill these sentient beings, that it's the way of life, it's nature. It seems like a disconnect for someone to say, I love you, but I'm perfectly happy supporting organizations or believing in this idea that it's right for my species to kill you, to enslave you, and to eat you up, to chop you into little bits. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't see a disconnect between that. Now, most of us, I think, that are being rational do see a disconnect between these statements. That's why many vegans and vegetarians get frustrated in regards to the way that a lot of, and I'm going to use the word, a lot of carnists, a lot of people that believe in this idea that it is natural, it is necessary, it is normal for people to eat these sentient beings. Let's move on.
So that's outstanding. And when people want to reduce suffering even in other species. Again, outstanding, great. This video is not about complaining about that stuff. This video is complaining about the fact that a lot of vegans, I would say a majority that I debate with online, are not honest about what they believe. So most of this video isn't even going to be about their beliefs versus my beliefs. It's their beliefs versus their own beliefs. They say things, they make assertions that they themselves don't believe, but they're acting on emotion and feels, and they're saying things for shock value that just aren't true, and they know they aren't true. And that.
Well, here's the thing. You may be right in the assertion that many vegans are saying things that they know are not true. You, however, don't know that as a certitude. And it's a pseudo-profundity when people start proclaiming they know what people think. You can say that what someone is saying is not true, but I find that a lot of people get into this realm of presuming they know what someone thinks, when in actual fact, they actually do believe these things. They do think what they think. And maybe they just have a different way of seeing the world than you do. Now, I'd actually agree with you that in a lot of situations, people are saying things for shock value, both within the anarcho-capitalist camp, so the libertarian voluntarist camp, or within the vegan camp, or any other camp, feminist camp. It doesn't matter. I mean, you find that when people get into tribes, they start simply saying what they say for the purpose of advocating for their tribe, as opposed to believing in what they're saying. That's why I think it's so important to not fall into tribalism. I believe in truth, for which there is no religion higher than. I follow Satyagraha, the truth force. I'm not interested in subscribing to any vegan ideology, any anarchist ideology. I believe in essentially non-violence, no rulers. I believe in the golden rule. That's my fundamental belief. And I don't want to start classifying myself into ideologies, into groups, because as soon as you start doing that, I feel as if you're inviting this attitude of tribalism. I see this going on within the black community, within the feminist community, within the ANCAP community, within the vegan community. I'm not about that. So to the point, I don't want to start proclaiming I understand what you think, but I will comment on what you actually say.
That's, first of all, telling a lie isn't helpful to begin with, and it definitely isn't helpful if you want to spread your message and convince other people.
True.
I'm going to start with the example of meat is murder, a popular saying among some vegans. Meat is not murder. Look up the word murder. The word murder means a human being killing a human being in certain situations.
All right, I'm going to call you up on that. I knew this was going to come down to definitions. This is more often the sticking point of every argument. Always comes down to definitions, how people define things. Now, granted, if you looked up in a dictionary at present what the word murder means, and I've realized this, a lot of people actually define murder as limited to only human animals. Now, I always like to look at the original meaning of the word. Now, granted, people may have used murder in relation to human beings. I think if we have a more nuanced understanding of this, realizing that human beings obviously are sentient beings, they are a type of animal, we can easily understand that there are going to be other species that are similar to human beings. And I think the idea of limiting murder only to human beings, whereas that may be how some people define the word, I most certainly do not define murder in relation just to human beings, because it would be a logically inconsistent argument. If I was to make the if I was to, let's say, have a scenario where an alien species comes down to planet Earth that is very similar to human beings, however, they are still not part of our species. Or let's say there is some kind of genetic mutation in the future, something perhaps a little bit more plausible, and human beings morph into a different type of species, some new species that is a bit more sophisticated, and they are no longer part of the human race. Now, this species, this new species may have the same characteristics. They may have the same capacity to feel emotion, maybe even more intelligent. Now, the idea of saying that if I kill this other species, if I harm that other species, that it is no longer murder because they're no longer part of the human race, I think becomes a little foolish, to say the least. So this idea that you're only limiting murder to human animals, I think is something, in my opinion, people do just to make their arguments more appropriate to them. I find a lot of statists make the same argument in regards to the concepts like property. I got into this conversation just the other day where a guy was saying that property is not property unless, of course, it can be defended by a central authority like a government. Now, obviously, something is mine if I acquire it fairly without violating anyone. It's mine. I applied my time and energy to it. The idea of saying you're going to define something based off of this idea that unless, of course, it can be defended by a governing body, I think is silly. And I think the idea, similarly, I think the idea of saying that something is only murder when it's in relation to your species, your in-group, I think is a somewhat of a myopic way of defining it. And quite frankly, I don't define murder like that. I never have. Granted, I understand a lot of people do it. And granted, that may be even the current definition. But one thing we have to realize is the definitions change. If you look up in the dictionary right now, if you have a look at the definition of the word anarchist, you will find that it is in reference to disorder. That it's in this idea that there is lawlessness. There's no law. It's just complete chaos. When the actual original meaning of the word is in relation to no rulers. From an without and archon, rulers. So essentially it means no rulers. Now, if we go with this ostensible definition of what anarchy means, would simply say, well, anarchy means there's no rulers. Therefore, when I'm making reference to anarchy, it's in relation to people that don't believe in any kind of law or rules. Now, that's not how I define anarchy. Similarly, that's not how I define murder. And I think it would be a foolish thing to do to define murder as only in relation to human animals.
Now, you can say, well, that's just semantics. It's what words mean. Don't use words to mean what they don't mean.
I agree. And once again, it comes down to this question. What does the word mean? Now, you're saying it means one thing. I'm saying it means something else. So I invite the general public to decide what word, what definition murder has. Whether my definition is a more accurate, more consistent way of looking at what murder should actually mean, or whether Larken's approach that murder should only be limited to the human species and we can do anything we want based off of the fact that we're doing it only to our species, and it's not considered murder if it's outside of our species.
Now, if what you mean is meat is just as bad as murder, then say that. However, that doesn't exactly make sense either. Meat is a substance. For example, if you're walking along and you get run over by a car and you're dead by the side of the road, technically you're a pile of meat. Are you murder? No. Meat is a noun. Murder is a verb. Why would you say something like that?
I agree, and I often criticize people for making that conflation. Meat in of itself is not murder. If you happen to just consume meat, that is not murder. People that advocate that you're somehow supporting an industry because you are simply eating that thing, you may have simply seen roadkill on the street. You may simply be at someone's house and they've offered you food. Now, personally, I would not eat meat in any situation because I personally don't think it's good for you. And I find the whole thing to be revolting. But that's irrelevant. I mean, at the end of the day, provided you're simply not supporting the advocate, so actually paying someone to kill this animal directly. So, granted, you can make the argument that if you're supporting an industry after the fact, it's still technically not a violation. But the point is, I agree with what Larken is saying, that simply eating meat is not a violation, is not murder per se. But it's the idea of supporting this industry. People take issue with people that want to condone this acceptance of something that is so opposed to what they deem as being right. So, yeah, if we're being definitive, if we're being clear about this, you're 100% right. Meat in of itself is not murder.
Like that. I'll tell you why you would say something, because it's shocking and it gets people's attention. It's also ridiculous. If you get run over and you're lying by the side of the road and some psycho cannibal comes along and eats you, did he murder you? Nope. He had nothing to do with your death. He ate you after the fact. That's pretty creepy, but it's still not murder.
Touché. Larken in top form. I absolutely love this kind of stuff because it's logically consistent. It is absolutely perfectly sound. It's disgusting, but it's not murder.
eating you after the fact is not murder. So meat is murder is a fine example of something that is just plain not true at all, and people use it for shock value. Here's one that I see even a number of anarchists saying, which is carnism is a religion. First of all, carnism isn't anything. To try to make it an ism is already dishonest.
Okay, how is it dishonest?
Eating meat is something that Homo sapiens have done for thousands of years. Now, time out. First straw man to not throw at me is, are you saying that just because people have done it for thousands of years, it's okay? No, I'm not. Don't argue that. That's BS. I'm saying that it's not a religion. It's not a belief system. The ism thing is about a philosophy or a belief system.
Okay. Time out. Now you're saying, granted, you're not saying that just because people have done it for thousands of years doesn't make it okay. Touche. But you're saying just once people are doing something for thousands of years, it's not a belief system. Yes, it can be. It's the same argument. Just because you've been doing something, you now consider it natural. It may be natural to, let's say, freaking rape people. Just because we've been doing it a long time and it's part of society, it still can make it a belief system. It is a belief, just like the system of government. People have been ingrained in this society for such a long time that they don't see it as being a belief system. It's just the way of things. But anything can be a belief system. It is a way in which you perceive reality. For you to say that carnism is not a belief system is like saying the government is not a belief system. It's like saying the belief in Santa Claus is not a belief system. It still is a belief system. It is this idea that is based off of a notion that it is acceptable, it is normal, it is necessary, it is natural to be eating animals. It is still a belief. And granted, I understand why people don't want to refer to this idea of eating meat as a religion because it seems so natural, but essentially it is. I mean, how do we define religion? That's essentially from the Latin word relegare, to bind, to hold back. And I would make the argument that the idea of simply holding to an ideology, even something like eating meat, and not wanting to look at this idea that it may actually not be natural and normal and necessary, is to be held back into this way of thinking. Any situation, any ideology where your thinking is limited, you're unable to open yourself up to other ways of seeing the world because you're indoctrinated. You're so emotionally held onto this idea of the taste of meat. You love this thing so much that you don't want to open yourself up to the truth. Can technically be a belief system, can technically be a religion. And I would say the most powerful religion, even more powerful than the government, is this idea that you must continue eating this thing because it tastes so good. People, as soon as you start questioning what people eat, so no, I don't know, I'll eat whatever I want. No, don't talk about my food. No, shut up, fucking vegans. You get the same religiosity, the same attachment, the same not wanting to look at something outside of your indoctrinated belief. So by definition, yes, the idea of carnism is a belief system and is a religion.
Eating meat is just what Homo sapiens have done for thousands of years all over the world.
Hey, raping people, I hate doing this because it sounds horrible, but it's the same argument. Hey, we've been raping people for so long. The ancient Romans, they would rape people. They practiced infanticide. It's just they've been doing it for such a long time. It's not a belief system. It's just things that we do. Hey, I'm going to start beating people over the head with a baseball bat. 1,000 years later, I've been doing it for a long time. Everyone else has been doing it for a long time. Hey, man, this is just what we do, man. Like, why are you calling this a religion? It's not a religion, man. It's just what we do. Like, it's crazy. Larken, you are definitely someone that is logically consistent enough to realize that that's not an argument. I shouldn't have to make that as an argument. This is the problem. People try to equate what is going on with what is natural, when nature has really the etymology of it from niter. Is this Egyptian word that makes reference to the principled nature of things, this principle of the universe. It's not saying that whatever we see around us suddenly becomes nature, because our nature is not to be constrained by nature. We're constantly evolving. Yes, we have certain proclivities, certain indoctrinated beliefs that have been indoctrinated through our environment or through our physiology, but they're constantly changing. If you believe in evolution, if you believe in centropy, this idea that we're constantly moving into higher realms of thought, consciousness, then you realize that nature is not fixed. It is fluid, and the idea saying that because we've been doing something for a long enough time makes it not a belief system would be a false assertion.
And to pretend that's a religion to make it sound shocking and whatever, it's just stupid. It's not a religion. It's not a belief system. It's not a philosophy. It's just something people have done for a long time, whether it's right or wrong. It's like saying, oh, you're a shoeist because you're one of those people who wears shoes. That doesn't make it a philosophy. It's just a thing.
Well, actually, if we're going to be technical about this, it can. If you believing that it's necessary to wear shoes in order to be healthy, that may be a belief system. You can call it a belief system. Once again, I think this comes down to people taking offense to the idea of something being a belief system, when the reality is, it still is a belief system. People just want to look at themselves as being rational, logical, and not have the, in my opinion, they don't want to buy into this idea that they're somehow not rationalists, and everything they do is perfectly consistent with nature and has nothing to do with any kind of ideology. But the reality is we all have ideology, we all have philosophies. Some of them are logically consistent and some of them are not. Now, I would have the honesty to say that, yes, I do have a belief system. I would say that my belief system is that it is always wrong to initiate violence on sentient beings. And that my belief system is more logically consistent than someone that says it's okay, it is wrong to initiate violence on anyone, unless of course they're not part of the human race. I think one system is definitely more logically consistent than the other.
That people do. On the other hand, veganism is an ism because it's people saying, well, we believe it's wrong to treat animals this way. It's a belief system.
How is that any different than people saying that we believe it's right to kill animals and eat them? I mean, you just have to take a step back. This is really disappointing, and I hate doing this kind of stuff. But I think the reason I'm doing this is because I want people to see the illogical inconsistency of these arguments.
Actually deserves an ism. Carnism is stupid. It's a stupid phrase that doesn't mean anything. And to pretend that it's a religion.
Well, actually, it does have a meaning. In fact, if we want to define it, if I might, let's define carnism for y'all. It doesn't mean anything. It's a stupid belief system. Define carnism. Carnism is the invisible belief system or ideology that conditions people to eat certain animals. Carnism is essentially the opposite of veganism, as carn means flesh or the flesh, and ism refers to the belief system. So yeah, it is a belief system. It's the belief system that says, I like dogs and I don't like people killing and eating my dogs, but it's okay for people to kill and eat cows because cows are just for consumption and dogs are beautiful. Come on, man, come on. Need I say more?
When it's just people doing a thing they've done for ages, it's just silly. You're trying to make it sound sensational.
Wow. When it's people that have just been doing what they do for just ages, it's just it's so philosophically bad to make that kind of an argument. You are making an appeal to nature fallacy, and I know you know better than this. I mean, for you to say that it's not a religion because it's something people have been doing for ages is a really bad argument. And I feel like I don't even need to say this to someone like Larken, that is someone that is typically so consistent when it comes to the arguments that he makes. But for some reason, as soon as you move into this realm of what I eat, hey man, that's just natural. No, Larken, it's not natural.
To get people's attention and being dishonest in the process.